Yes, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Celtic View Podcast. I'm Ryan Marr, and today I'm with, we're kind of matching, Paul, aren't we? Celtic View editor, Paul Cuddy. We should have had a chat beforehand. With a black t-shirt on.
I think it looks better.
Yeah,
that way.
Been in synchro. Yeah. There's lots to go through today, Paul. We've got a review of the last weekend's games, a preview to this weekend's games coming up as well, and we're also going to give everyone a taster of the Glenn Loovens podcast interview. Which is out now already on the Celtic YouTube page and all your podcast platforms as well. So if you've not had a chance to listen to it yet, then get yourself onto it. But we'll give you a snippet of it today because it was a really entertaining chat actually with Glenn.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I think it's been great to hear some of these players that maybe weren't the sort of shining stars as it were, but they made a really good contribution. Obviously, with Niall McGinn before that, with Jack Snivern, maybe people that fans haven't heard from so much when they've left, and Glenn Loovens is one of those. And I thought he spoke really, really well of his time at Celtic, and no, it's well worth watching or listening to.
I know. I mean, we'll get into a little bit later on as well with him, but it's always with a lot of players, with so many players that come and play for Celtic, and they always say they didn't know how big the club was until they actually got into it, and then when they leave, Glenn Loovens says at the end that he actually regrets leaving. It's something you hear quite a lot, but all of these players always have Celtic so close to their hearts from the time that they have at the club, and it's been great to hear from them. And I suppose if anyone has any suggestions of anyone they would like to hear from as well, then comment in the comments below or get in touch with us, because we're definitely going to look out for some more people to chat to. Let's have a review of the weekend's games. It feels like a wee while ago now. 5-1 win for the first team against St Mirren, a 3-0 win away for the B team against Bo'ness, and a 5-0 win for the women's team away to Boroughmuir. So let's just kind of get a little short reflection on all of those, maybe a main takeaway from each of them, starting with that St Mirren game, the 5-1 victory in the Cup.
Well, I think first of all it was a really good cup tie, and what struck me at the game, I mean, St Mirren came and had a go, and I don't think they would have played that way if it was a league game, which I always find surprising, because the way teams play at Celtic Park, it's almost like they're admitting that they're never going to win, so they're trying to keep the score down. Whereas St Mirren, ultimately, it was a heavy defeat, but obviously the dynamic of the game changed when we went down to 10 men. We were definitely the better side, but they definitely came and had a go, so it made for a much better game. But ultimately, there was, I think for me, so Matt Riley scoring his first goal of the season, I think people could sometimes forget how much of a contribution he's made in terms of assists, but you could see the relief in his face when he scored. Getting his first goal, and a classic striker's goal, which I always love, that just pounces on that ball after the keeper saves it, and then Reo Hatate just showing his class. I mean,
how good is he?
Oh, he's phenomenal. I mean, it's what I love about him is it just looks effortless. There's times when he has the ball and you just think somebody's going to come in and nick it off him, and then he just moves, but he glides across that park, and cool penalty, and his other goal was just a wonderful finish. Yeah,
that was going to be my main takeaway, was Hatate's performance, and it was only a cameo appearance because he came off the bench, didn't he? But I feel like he's now taking on maybe more responsibility in the team. Obviously he took up the penalty, which is a real sign of that as well. But he just seems to really be enjoying his football, and he's taking on that responsibility of being a guy to arrive late into the penalty box and try and set up goals and chances as well. But he's so good. And I'm trying to think about maybe other Celtic players comparing the past of who he might play like, but he's quite unique in that he does everything in the game, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I think obviously the longer he's here and the more we play, I think he grows into it. And I say this season, one of the kind of other things that stuck out for me was the time we played him at right back, and he looks as if he'd played there his whole life. The other thing that almost caught me by surprise at the weekend was Cameron Carter-Vickers was announced as man of the match. So at first I was surprised, but then I realised why I was surprised, because he plays like that every week. He is a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 every week. So it was almost like he didn't stand out because I don't know if that makes sense, but because he stands out all the time. His level of consistency is so high that actually, I mean, it was great that he did get the man of the match, and he was typically outstanding, but it's almost like I almost had to give myself a check to say, you're almost taking him for granted, because some players, goal scorers, they'll get the highlights and the headlines and the Man of the Match awards. Cameron Carter-Vickers is just, as I say, 9 or 10 out of 10 every single game. What a player he is.
He's unbelievable, and it's the same anytime if I'm going to games, away games, and speaking to the manager afterwards, you kind of go through chronologically sometimes the goals that happen, and I need to stop and check myself sometimes and make sure you mention the defence, not just the back four, but the whole defensive unit from the forwards backwards, because they do such an immense job of keeping goals out the other end. And we're unfortunate, obviously, conceding a penalty in that game. But with Carter-Vickers, he does go unnoticed a lot of the time, and he almost looks like sometimes he's playing with so much ease, that the game looks easy for him, and he just plays with so much confidence and so much belief in his ability, because he's so fast as well, that he makes it look so easy.
Yeah, I mean, he's a different type of player and a different style of player to Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah.
But it's the same idea that actually he's so good, and he reads the game so well, he's so in control, and there's part of me that's loath to talk about this amazing statistic of him and Cal Starfelt have never lost a domestic game when they partner together.
That's really nice.
Yeah, but it works so well because and again, the defence is looking so solid. Alistair Johnson's fitted in seamlessly. Greg Taylor's, as I say, is right up there as one of the players of the season for me. And you've got this great goalkeeper behind them. But again, the manager said to you before that the defending starts from the front, so it's the whole team. And although the one negative from the weekend was the injury to Kyogo, and we hope that that's not going to be long term. We'll find out, I think, towards the end of the week when the manager does his press conference. Then he just puts Dyson Maeda through the middle, and again he scores the goal, but when St Mirren have the ball, he's pressing it and just doesn't give them a second.
I would hate to be a defender that plays against Celtic. I mean, to think, Kyogo's going off right, we might get a little bit of a breather here, and pops Dyson Maeda, and you're thinking, I'm going to have potentially even less time in the ball. Like, imagine having to come up in that on a week-to-week basis. It'd just be frightening.
I know. And I say, to be fair to St Mirren, I thought they and I think because it was a cup tie, and they've got nothing to lose, and they did come and have a wee bit of a go, which I think more teams should do, and I'm surprised that they don't, because say when they play that ultra-defensive formation, they're almost admitting that they can't win.
Yeah.
So the best they can hope for is that we have an off day and we don't score and beat them, but that's happened so rarely.
I know, because that game was in the balance for so long, not in terms of the performance-wise, but in terms of the scoreline. It was 1-0 for so long, and then you never know in games like that. So I definitely agree. It makes more of a spectacle, and you would, the amount of times that teams do just come here and sit in and do make it hard for us, and no one's really managed to get any points from us doing that this season. So.
And it was a long day. I mean, that half an hour stop for VAR, they decided whether to give us a penalty. I mean, it was. I think that's the. I mean, I don't know why it wasn't given right away, because it was obvious handball, but it was about 5 minutes before the VAR referee advised the referee to go over, and another 3 or 4 minutes before he checked. And that, I think that's always been the big complaint, certainly from here, from the manager, is that it's the length of time. If they're going to make a decision, make it quickly and just get on with the game. But all's well that ends well.
I know. I was actually, because I wasn't working at the game at the weekend, and I sat up with one of my friends who sits, I think it's 4-4-4 or something like that, and it's like up in the corner, up to the right hand side, pretty much the top row, which it's different sitting. It's weird sitting in a different seat for a game, particularly somewhere so high up as well. You just see the game completely differently. I was miles away and I could see that was a handball. I was standing there like head in my hands. How is that? How have you not seen that? And the fact it took so long, it was just like, it was such a nightmare. But it was actually quite a weird experience sitting somewhere else and seeing the game from a different angle. And I don't envy the people that have to make that journey every game though, because my legs were knackered.
Keep you fit.
I know, definitely. Looking at the other games then, the Bees, they won 3-0 away to Bo'ness. Mackenzie Carr, Ben Quinn and Bosun Lowell. He scored a really nice goal, quick feet. Main takeaways from that, my main takeaway actually was Bosun Lowell's goal, and even in the second goal as well, it was very similar, where he was kind of advancing forward from the back, and I wasn't at that game, I didn't see the full 90 minutes, but in terms of him in particular, the games I have been at recently or watched, I feel like there's a real confidence to him now. Maybe from training with the first team more often, obviously getting his debut in the game against Morton as well. But in comparing his performances now to the start of the season, he looks so solid defensively, and he's also got this confidence of coming forward with the ball and beating people and taking shots and goal. And it was great to see him get a goal. So that'd be my main takeaway from that. But what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think on that point, I think that's, obviously we spoke about it before, that's the whole point of, Steve McManus moving over and working with Darren O'Dea and the B team to kind of synchronise what happens between the B team and the first team in terms of training, in terms of the style of play. And obviously as these guys train more with the first team, it gives them confidence, gives them an incentive. As you say, Bosun Law's already made his debut, so the hope, and obviously that's happening as they get back to the B team with that renewed confidence, but also they're training at maybe a higher level. But then it gives them a taste of what they want, and they know they have to work hard in the B team in order to get in there. The other goal, the Mackenzie Carse goal, was a great finish. Really quick feet again, good volley into half volley into the back of the net. Anytime I've seen the B team, I like him. I like the way he is on the ball. Like sometimes. Whenever you watch football and there's just certain players that, whether it's a Celtic game or just a game that you're watching on TV, there's just certain players that when they take the ball and they move, they kind of catch your eye because it's almost like they look like footballers. It's the same when you see people running. There's some people that look as if their legs aren't quite following the instructions from their head, but somehow they move forward. And then there's other people that are just, they're graceful and their movement is so natural. And I think he's one of those players that just looks natural on the ball, and I like the way he takes the ball and moves, and also he's maybe not the tallest, but he's really tough in that midfield, and yeah. I like any time I've seen the B team play, I think he always looks quite impressive.
He's got a bit about him. He likes to get himself in for a tackle as well.
That's always a euphemism for get stuck in. He's a bit. No, I know what you mean, because I think in midfield you have to have everything, because you can have all the skill and the vision and everything, but it's such a competitive part of the pitch that, as you say, you need to be able to look after yourself as well, and I like that as well about him. Yeah,
we'll preview the B team's game this weekend later on. The women's team, they don't have a game coming up this weekend, but last weekend they won 5-0 away to Boroughmuir in the Scottish Cup, and that sets up a quarter-final tie against Hearts away, which is the same as the first team as well, which we'll chat about in a little bit, but focusing on the women's team, they're continuing the defence of the Scottish Cup as well. Hearts away in that quarter-final. It's a game that they had recently in the league, and I think it was a narrow 2-1 victory. So it's not going to be an easy game for them. No, I mean, I think it was a good win, and as you say, defending the trophy. They obviously want to get back to the final. We were the first team to beat Hearts at the Oriam through in Edinburgh this season in the league, and then I think they lost another game just the other week there, but yeah, it'll be a tough game, and obviously there's always a slightly different dynamic for cup ties. But the team, again, they're not losing many goals at all this season, which is great. So they'll certainly be confident getting into that game. Yeah, Hearts are a team in the women's side that are putting in a lot of investment as well. I think they've got a game coming up, Edinburgh Derby, which they're hoping. I can't remember who's at home, if it's Hibs or Hearts. It's at Tynecastle, which they're hoping is going to be the record and get over 10,000. So I think that could be a fixture in the kind of the years to come, where both teams will be kind of pushing maybe the semi-finals and finals facing each other, because they're putting in a lot of investment, which is brilliant to see in the women's game as well, to get more competition. And it's obviously ourselves having won both cups last season. Also Glasgow City and Rangers and Hibs have won cups as well. And I suppose for the women's game, the more teams that you have challenging, then the better the product is. Yeah, I mean, I think certainly even in the last 2 or 3 years, as Celtic and Rangers have become proper challengers to Glasgow City, because obviously they dominated it. I think they won 13 league titles in a row. So, there's now, every season there's a genuine 3-horse race for the title. But you've always had, particularly in the cups, you've had teams like Hibs that have done well. Spartans are always quite a difficult team to play, but as you say, if teams like Hearts and obviously teams like Aberdeen and Motherwell are starting to build and grow, and they know it's a long-term process, but the more competitive I think it is, it's better for
Because if people start watching the women's game, you know, I think they'll be pleasantly surprised. But then the more competitive it is, obviously that raises the standard, and I think that can only be good for the game.
100%. Our first team's quarter-final tie in the Scottish Cup, also away to Hearts. Don't know if the date's out for that yet, but it's around the weekend, 11th of March, isn't it? It's probably one of the draws that one-off cup games you're probably wanting to avoid, really, but if you can go there and get a victory and get into the semi-final, the confidence you get, and of late we've done pretty well at Tynecastle as well, so it's a really exciting one though, isn't it, the Scottish Cup weekend, that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it will depend. I know there's a rugby game on at Murrayfield that weekend, so that it will dictate slightly whether, I can't remember what day it is, because it's obviously it's not a sport I focus on, but I think in terms of the cup tie at Hearts, obviously over the years the league allocation of tickets has been cut back, but I think there's in the Scottish Cup I think you have to have a certain percentage, so that'll make for a much bigger Celtic support. I think, you know, the atmosphere, you know, I would say that we're not exactly welcomed with open arms there, but I think it adds that wee edge. I know again from past and present players they like playing at Tynecastle because it's kind of traditional. The pitch is, you know, the fans are right almost on top of the pitch, so it'll make for a great atmosphere. And as you say, we've done quite well there in recent years, and you know, the way we're playing just now, whether we're home or away, regardless of the opposition, you go into the games really confident.
I know, that's one thing I love about the Scottish Cup, is when you get that away allocation bigger as well, because I mean, even the game here against Morton, fair play to Morton, I think they brought about 3,000 or 4,000, and even though they were 3, 4, 5-0 down, they were singing throughout the whole game. And there's something just, I don't want to say the magic of the cup.
You just have.
I know, but there's something, I'm going to kind of say it again, there's something kind of magical about the cup where it's almost like everything else just goes out the window. All league form, anything's possible in that one moment. You get a good sort of 3,000 fans at the games. It just feels different, the cup. It's just I love it. I love the Scottish Cup so much. And the fact that you then got a game against Hearts to look forward to makes it even that bit more kind of special as well. And as you said, you know, we had the 4-3 there recently this season. I can remember we beat them 7-0 in the cup. Was that in the Scottish Cup? And
yeah, Scott Brown scored.
Yeah, Lustig scored from outside the box as well. So some good memories and hopefully some more.
Yeah, we'll take 7-0.
We will indeed. We're going to preview the weekend's fixtures, but first of all, we're going to give you some of that interview with Glenn Loovens. The full interview is out now on the YouTube channel, anywhere you get your podcast as well, so please do check it out. But we're going to give you a little snippet over here, a little taster of what Glenn Loovens was chatting to us about his time at Celtic. So let's hear from Glenn now. That game against Kilmarnock, 6-0, where we do win the league, as you mentioned, you were one of the players that scored in that first half. I remember being at that game and it was just incredible. Celtic had 3 stands, the atmosphere was amazing, the football we played was amazing as well. What do you remember of that occasion?
Yeah, well, this is one of the few games I do remember playing in. Like you said, it felt like a home game. I think it was 5-0 in the end. So it was, yeah, like you said, we're playing some good football, scoring some goals. So it's the kind of game that, you know, it's like I said, it felt like a relief from all those years that the year before we didn't make it. Also, my first season we didn't quite make it on a couple of points. But now, you know, with some good football, we brought it back to Celtic, and for me that was, like I said, a big relief and yeah, one of my proudest moments in football.
The atmosphere on that day was amazing at Rugby Park, but you can use that as an example, but just in general, the Celtic fans, how do you remember them and the atmosphere that they would create for the team?
Yeah, I have to say I was quite lucky with all my teams that I played for with the fans, but yeah, Celtic were right up there, home and away. It was always a sellout, and yeah, especially the Champions League nights, under the lights, it was something amazing. I still get goosebumps, talking about it. These are the things as a player you always remember, and they were there for us in good and bad times. So no, they're amazing. Really, really good.
I'm sure Celtic fans will always love to hear that. Just to Glenn about you then leaving the club, and after that we're going to go do some quick fire questions, which we always do with our guests when we get them on. But in terms of leaving, you then going that summer to Spain. Was it just a case of wanting a new challenge at that stage in your career?
Yeah, listen, I like Celtic a lot as a club, but the league at times, you play seven times Kilmarnock in one season, and after 4 years, it can be a lot. Can be quite intensive. I knew the Kilmarnock players better than my own wife, so yeah, I felt like after 4 years, it was time for a new challenge, and although Celtic offered me a new deal, but yeah, for me, I felt like I needed a new chapter in my career, and that's why I decided to leave. But Neil Lennon at the time, he said, "Listen, when you look back, you always regret leaving." And at one point, he was kind of right, because hey, I went to Spain and stuff, and although I had some good experience as well, but I always kind of missed playing for Celtic.
Yeah, it's a club that always just leaves a place in people's hearts, even when they leave. Glenn, let's finish off on some quick fire questions, as we always do when we have a guest on. So, some questions on your teammates at the time, or memories, different things like that. So, to kick off with, who was the biggest practical joker and the biggest prankster in the squad during your time at Celtic?
Yeah, if I have to say one, it's Scott Brown.
In terms of yourself, did you have a favourite goal you scored at Celtic?
Let me see. Yeah, well, let's go for the one that when we won the league, just because of the game, what it represented for me.
Yeah, that's a good shout. In terms of other players in the team, who was the one that caught your eye the most? The one that you would say is maybe the best sort of technically?
For me, that's easy. It's Nakamura. When we did boxes, I never see him gave the ball away once. It's incredible. And if he gave the ball away, it was normally because it was a foul made on him. He was that good.
I've heard people talking about Nakamura before, saying they would watch him in training and he'd take 20 free kicks and every single one would just go in the top corner, and they're standing there like, I can't believe what I'm watching.
It was incredible. It was funny as well because he never spoke a word English, and then with the national team we played Japan, and he came to me and he said, "Hi Glenn, are you okay?" I was like, "Oh, this guy can't speak English, man." But in the 2-3 years he was there, he never spoke a word.
Brilliant. I don't know if you had a fine system at the club when you were at Celtic, but if you did, is there a player that would get fined the most, or is there a player that got a fine which made you laugh a lot?
I can't remember. Of course, we had a fine system for sure, but I can't remember. I should, because I think the last year I was in charge of it as well. Oh my God!
Was there anybody always late to training or things like that?
I honestly can't remember. I can't remember.
What about yourself? Did you ever get fined for anything?
Yeah, but stupid things, leaving stuff outside or in the dressing room, things like this. You never caught me coming late or anything like this, but normally like silly things.
Who would you say was the strongest player, or it could be the strongest or the angriest player you played with at Celtic?
Bobo Balde, I remember this story that I came in the dressing room and they put my kit. It was the first day. They put my kit in his locker. So obviously, first day I come in quite early, getting changed, and then big Bobo Baldy came in and he said, "That's my locker," and he took my clothes and he hanged them somewhere else. And I was like, "Okay, Bobo, if you say so." So I went to the kit man. I said, "Sorry, but you put me in Bobo Baldy's place. Can you sort it out? Because I don't want him. I don't want to make him angry." So if I have to go for one, for sure, it's Bobo Baldy.
Because, I mean, Glenn, you're a big guy yourself, a big rugged centre half. Was Bobo just a different level?
Not as big as Bobo Baldy, trust me. He looked like a unit.
You've come out with some brilliant stories, Glenn. I don't know if is there anything else that comes to mind, because there's been some great ones already.
I'll tell you one. It was with the manager Neil Lennon at the time. I remember playing the first 9-10 games, and we won all 9 or 10. Then we played Rangers, and we lost. It wasn't a good game. The game after that, we were 2-0 up at home, but me and Mastorovic, we had like 1 or 2 moments that, we weren't sure of each other, which caused a little bit of panic. So, he came in the dressing room and he said, "What shall I do with you two?" And, now if I look back, I shouldn't reply, but I said, "Well, you're the manager, you decide what to do." Yeah. And then, he kind of was, he left anyway. He left me out the squad for a couple of weeks, just to make a point, which, okay, I was upset about, but things happened. And he said, "Okay, Glenn, today you have to do the boxes upstairs. You have to show to all the carpet boxes, show your face." I said, "I don't feel like it. I'm not going." He said, "Okay, that's a fine." I said, "Okay, you can fine me, not a problem." So he said, "Okay, I fine you." So, I think it was £1,000 or something like that. So it was, quite a lot of money for just not going to the boxes. So I was already, so that made me even more. And then he was like, "Hoo, are we going on a night out with Glenn's money?" So I thought, how can I get him back? I said, okay. So I bought this, I think it was at Christmas time. So I bought this Christmas big bag with lights on it and stuff. And I gave him £1,000 in coins. And I put this on his desk and I said, "Here, take this out on a night out." And that kind of broke the ice between us again. After that, it was quite good again.
That is a brave move, because that goes either one or two ways. Either he likes it, like he did, or he gets even more annoyed.
Yeah. No, he took it the right way, and it was intended a little bit like that to break the ice, because I wanted to play back again, and it was a good solution in the end. And like you said, it's a good story in the end to tell.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here to tell it. Yeah, I'm glad you're here to tell the tale. Just finally, Glenn, when you look back on your whole time at Celtic, just try and sum up, if you can, what memories come to mind and just what your time at Celtic really means to you.
Listen, if I look back at my time at Celtic, overall, it's joy. It's I met some lovely people. I played for a great club, for some great fans. Won trophies. My one of my daughters got born there, so it's like it will always be a special place for me. When I once in a while come back, and with joy and fun memories of. So nothing but good praises for Celtic for me.
Well, do come back and see us all soon at Celtic Park, and I'm sure the Celtic fans will love hearing all those stories and those memories from you, Glenn. Thank you so much for joining us in the Celtic View podcast and taking out time in your day and sharing those stories again. It's brilliant to hear it, Glenn, but thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, there we go. Former defender Glenn Loovens, talking about his time at Celtic, and he had some brilliant stories in there, Paul.
Do you know one of the things I forgot actually, and I felt a bit sorry for him because he was talking about, there's a bit in the podcast where he talks about the 2009-10 season where Tony Mowbray started as manager and then Neil Lennon came in as interim manager, and he had a few hamstring injuries, and because of the way the season was going, he kind of felt he kind of rushed back, and ultimately when he rushed back the last time, it ended his season prematurely, which also ended his chance of going to the World Cup, which he probably would have made the Netherlands squad for the World Cup, and obviously that year they get to the final as well, and you know I'm sure, I mean, in terms of his career it's fine, but there must have been a wee niggling annoyance of that because, you know, so few players get to the World Cup, but then for the Netherlands to have done so well to get to the final, but he missed out because obviously through injury.
It must be so heartbreaking, because I'm sure he said that, the manager at the time said, like, well, I would have taken you, but you weren't playing because you weren't fit. Yeah. It must just be such a horrible feeling to know that you had that opportunity potentially to get there, and then you're probably sitting at home, obviously wanting your country to do well, but then seeing them keep progressing, you're thinking, oh, it could have been me there, but it's not worked out. But it was brilliant to chat to him, first time ever speaking to him, and he was great. He was great with stories. You know, really top person. We're speaking to him as well, and it's we were talking about it earlier there. Sometimes these players who they've obviously come to Celtic, they've done well, they've won medals, but we've maybe not heard from them in a long time, and it's just great to get their perspective and things again, and to hear about how much the club means to them, and just to kind of get some of those memories back. So yeah, definitely check it out if you're interested, and do let us know if there's other players who we've not spoken to or you'd like to hear their stories about. Just give us a comment, and hopefully we can try and set them up. Let's look ahead to the weekend then. As I said, there's no game for the women's team. The B team have Gretna at home on Saturday, and the first team have Aberdeen at home on Saturday as well. So let's start with the Aberdeen game. It's a game that had a lot of history to it. Celtic against Aberdeen. I think it's always an exciting one as well, because Aberdeen are one of the bigger clubs in Scotland. So I wanted just to start off actually just about any memories you have of the fixture at all, kind of going back, if there's anything springs to mind when you hear this fixture getting called out.
I mean, I remember back in the 80s, the big game, obviously Celtic Rangers games because of the derby, but the big game in terms of the two best teams and going for the league were Celtic and Aberdeen. And I always remember like going to the games, going with my dad, going into the jungle, and that was you knew that was the hardest game, because that Aberdeen team under Alex Fergusson, you know, they had lost that fear that Aberdeen teams maybe traditionally had of coming to Glasgow. So they would come to Celtic Park, to Ibrox, to Hampden, and they felt like they could win. So there was some, you know, we had a really top team at that time as well. So there were some great games. I always remember Aberdeen defender Doug Rugby, who was just like this, you know, one of these took no prisoners sort of guys. But he used to come and warm up before the game, a line up just right in front of the jungle, and he'd just be stretching over with his back to the jungle and stretching over, always like kind of provoking, and everybody's like getting up. And I thought, you know, even at the time, you think the psychology of that, he's almost trying to wind up the home crowd and almost like letting them know I'm not intimidated. So they were always exciting games. They were always absolutely packed, and you know they could go either way, because say they had a really good team, but so did we with some really top players at that time.
Was there a bit of kind of animosity then back then, or?
No, I don't think so. I mean, obviously there's that the famous incident that Gordon Strachan would obviously talk about more than anybody else, of, you know, the fan coming on the park. But I mean, I think they were fiercely competitive games, but I don't remember there being that kind of animosity between the kind of supporters that maybe the Aberdeen would have with Rangers fans that we don't have. But it was certainly the biggest game in Scotland at the time.
Mm-hmm. Was there quite a lot of sort of ding-dongs then between the two teams? Because I mean, Aberdeen, it's 40 years since '83 when they won the Cup Winners' Cup, isn't it now? And then was it '86 when they last won a title? So that was a real kind of period of success for them during the '80s. And they seem to have obviously you hear stories about the team that they had, but was it always one of those occasions when you're playing Aberdeen that one game they'd beat us, the next game we'd beat them? It was always kind of going back and forth.
I mean, it was two really good football teams. I mean, even those years, so we won a couple of league titles right at the start of the 80s, and even the other league titles that Aberdeen, certainly there was one or two, we kind of let it slip. Even the year that United won, we let some of them slip that we could have and should have probably won some of those league titles. I always thought they were really good football games as well, because Celtic traditionally would have, when you get into the mid-80s, you'd obviously Paul McStay in the heart of the midfield. You had, Charlie Nicholas broke through and was sensational, but Davy Provan in the wing. We were always a football team, but I think Aberdeen were as well. But it was no quarter given.
My memories of the fixture, because obviously started really following Celtic early 2000s, and at that point Aberdeen had sort of fallen to, well, not fallen, but they're at that level where they're probably still at now, fighting for third and fourth and maybe getting to cup finals and things like that. Remember the 9-0 game here at Celtic Park, 2010, 2011, something like that. Stokes and Hooper both scored hat-tricks, and then I suppose that period when Brendan Rodgers came in as manager, and we just seemed to always get Aberdeen in the cup finals. The first season with Rodgers, we get them in the League Cup final, beat them 3-0, and then that game in the Scottish Cup final where Rodgers scores in the 93rd, 94th minute. And I mean, I don't think I've ever been as nervous at a game of football before in my life, really. Like, just because you knew what was on the line. I think you think back to games where famous victories against like Barcelona's and things, where you're clearly nervous, but you didn't have any real expectation. But with that game, Aberdeen had some big chances in that game as well. I remember one where Kenny McLean, or was it Johnny Hayes or Kenny McLean, cut it back, can't remember what it was. It was kind of a 2-on-1, and you just thought, oh, this game's like, I cannot go to extra time. Your heart was racing, and then to get the goal in the last minute just sparked, it was less of like a celebration, just more like a sense of relief pouring out that we're actually going to achieve this amazing feat of going and having an invincible treble. And then we obviously got 3 more trebles there after that and played Aberdeen in more cup finals. But it was that period for Aberdeen under Derek McInnes where they were kind of sort of challenging us for the league title for a couple of years as well, and it kind of brought that game back to the top of Scottish football.
Yeah. I mean, the most nervous I've ever been at a game was the day we stopped to 10 here.
Yeah.
Felt sick because obviously everything was on the line that day. But I think a strong Aberdeen is good for Scottish football for a number of reasons. One is, that it's a one-club city, and they have such a big catchment area. So if they do well, they're filling their own stadium, they're bringing thousands of fans to away games. They've actually sold out their whole allocation for the game on Saturday, so it should make for a better atmosphere. I also think they're one of those teams, I know it's just a kind of fans thing, but when they're playing the other half of the city, they're giving it everything. Now, it's like, you just have a feeling sometimes when Hearts are playing Rangers, you think at Tynecastle you kind of know what way the game's going to go, but at Pittodrie or particularly Aberdeen, I think it just makes for a better league.
Yeah.
So I hope that they, we've got such a good record against them at home. We've got such a good record at home. I'm really confident we'll get the 3 points at the weekend. But I think longer term, it's a big decision they've got to make in terms of a manager. But I do think it's better for Scottish football if we get a strong Aberdeen, because they should be a big team and they've got real potential. But they kind of, in the post-Derek McInnes era, they've kind of lost their way a wee bit. So I hope they kind of get back on track.
They're in a bit of a kind of weird position at the moment, aren't they? Where they started off the season relatively okay, scoring goals, and new signings seem to be doing well. Under Jim Goodwin, it obviously kind of fell away quite drastically after the World Cup break. They got their first win against Motherwell under Barry Robson as interim manager. They've obviously got a lot of decisions to make about who comes in as a manager, what they want to be doing, because the last couple so far, Stephen Glass and Jim Goodwin, haven't really worked for them. So you don't really know what you're going to get at the game on Saturday from Aberdeen, because they've not been in great form, but they got their first victory. So is that going to change their fortunes a bit? I don't know.
I mean, it's such a football cliche that teams, when they sign their manager, they suddenly bounce back. I mean, Motherwell beat St Mirren in midweek. Now I don't know if that's a pure reflection on players that that they perform so badly, and obviously Aberdeen beat Motherwell, and then Motherwell got knocked out of the cup, and that's why Stevie Hamill got sacked. But suddenly they bounce back and they beat St Mirren, who've done well. I think maybe it's helped Barry Robson having a couple of weeks just to work with the players on the training ground, specifically to prepare for this weekend. But the dilemma Aberdeen have, as other teams have, is, well, we saw the ultimate in negativity when we played up there. Where, I think that was only the only other time I can think of that in football was when Craig Levein played a 4-6 in the Czech Republic in the Scotland game, and which was just criminal. But that doesn't, you run the risk of going ultra defensive, and then we're going to get a chance to score. So I don't really know, and the record at Celtic Park is so poor, and ours is so strong that I'm not quite sure how they're going to go about it. And they're a kind of strange team just now. I still think they're trying to build a team, so that
that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think we'll win quite comfortably in the end, I think.
Yeah, you'd like to imagine so. Nothing else would point to another result. But as you said about maybe wanting to see Aberdeen do well in the long term, hopefully for Barry Robson, I don't know if he's going to put his name in for the hat for that job, but he's another guy that obviously had a good career here at Celtic, and you would probably like to see him do quite well after Saturday as well. And his, again, talking about memories of Aberdeen games, his first touch, in that game, we beat them 5-1.
That was also the game where that audacious bit of McGeady's skill for to set up the wee chip to the back post for Scott McDonald's header. I mean, that was, I think Celtic TV must have been showing the highlights of that recently, and I watched it anyway, and it still takes my breath away the way he took two players out just with that bit of skill. But then, as you say, for Barry Robson to come on for his first touch as a Celtic player and score a free kick, and him and Paul Hartley, Gordon Strachan buying them that season were absolutely key to us ultimately winning the league title. And I think Celtic fans, obviously out with Saturday's game, I think they've always had quite a strong affection for Barry Robson, because I think he's an Aberdeen fan, and he's obviously played for them, and we hope he does well for them now. But he gave absolutely everything for Celtic when he played. I mean, he really did. People remember the goals, they remember the challenges in derby games in the first minute. They kind of let everybody know he was there, and goal against Barcelona. He was a really good player for us at a really key time.
It really, really was, yeah. Anyone who you interview who played with him, even the Celtic's team at that time, always said he was so horrible though. He was just like all elbows even in training. Like he gave everything in training as he did in the game. And I think Celtic fans really, I suppose any fans of club, if you see someone giving 100% and they're really passionate about the club and playing for the badge, then you always have strong memories of them. And I think Barry Robson's definitely in that case. But yeah, I'm sure hopefully a victory on Saturday, and I think the way that things are going, hopefully that will be the case. The B team are at home to Gretna on Saturday. There's only 6 games left for them in the league season. It finishes a little bit earlier than the league season for the first team, so it ends in about April time. There's not many games left at all, and they're still in a really good position. I know that they talk about the performances being more important than the results, but I'm sure with 6 games left to play, they probably will be looking to try and finish obviously as high in the table, and if they can finish top, then amazing.
Yeah, and I think the other incentive, obviously they just want to go into every game and win and just carry on. There've been some decent form recently, but the other incentive with the season finishing early is, it won't necessarily mean that that's them finished for the summer. There'll be certainly some of the players we mentioned earlier on about some of them training with the first team. So if they're finishing in this first team, have still got another 6 or 7 weeks, at the very least they'll be looking to try and push themselves so they're training with the first team anyway. So that's a real incentive. But in order to do that, obviously what they're doing every day, but then carry that into the games, and I'm confident that we'll get the 3 points in that game.
Yeah, Gretna are third bottom at the table in the Lowland League at the moment. There's quite a gap though between the bottom 2 teams. I don't even think they've reached double figures in terms of points, and then Gretna I think are about 25 points. But yeah, it's a game where you would like to think that Celtic will get the victory in that. Which kind of leads us then into our predictions, which
are you bringing them back? Yeah,
we've brought back. Yes, because I need to try and get some bragging rights because you are currently 10 points ahead of me, and we've not actually played the predictions game since before Christmas. So I've had that weight around my neck for the last sort of 7 weeks or so. So I need to try and start chipping away again. So we've got 7 games. I go up against yourself, vice versa. We've got a supporter involved. This week it is Liam Smith, who's taking part. So since we're just talking about that Celtic B game, why don't we start there against Gretna? What is your prediction for that?
I will go for 4-1 to Celtic.
Okay, I'm going for 4-0, and Liam is going for 1-0 with that one. A narrow victory. But looking at the first team's game then against Aberdeen on Saturday.
I will go for 4-0 for that game.
4-0, I like it. Well, Liam's went for 2-0 and I've went for 3-0, so hopefully along that path somebody's right at the end. There's no women's team game, so we've got 2 more games from our Scottish Premiership and then 3 games from the English Premier League as well, which is getting quite exciting in the moment actually after that game against Man City and Arsenal yesterday. But starting off, Dundee United against St Johnstone. It's quite a tricky one.
I think there's a lot of pressure in Dundee United just now. I think there's been a bit of rumbling of discontent amongst the fans. The team haven't been playing that well, but I think they were disappointed that I don't think the fans didn't feel they strengthened in the January transfer window. Obviously it's a kind of Tayside derby game. I like St Johnstone, I like Callum Davidson, and I think he's a decent manager, and I always feel they're quite a hard team to play. So I'm going to go 2-1 for St Johnstone.
I am exactly the same, 2-1 St Johnstone as well. Liam's went for 1-0 Dundee United, but yeah, again, talking about new manager bounces, Liam Fox gets announced as manager, Dundee United started to win a couple of games, and then again, it started to fall back. Where they win a couple of games, you go, they'll be fine then, Dundee United, they're not going to get relegated, too many good players. And then since then, it started to fall back down again, and you're kind of looking at it and thinking...
Because nobody's been cut adrift at the bottom this season. So actually, once the split comes in, the bottom 6, that'll be really interesting, because obviously there's everything to play for that relegation spot and the playoff spot, so it'll be really tight. But they need to start winning, but I'm not sure it'll be this weekend.
Yeah, good advert for the split when it comes in. The other game, which is on Sunday, lunchtime, I believe, is Motherwell against Hearts.
Well, Motherwell, we mentioned, had a good result against St Mirren midweek. I mean, on form, people would have thought St Mirren would have done well. I think Stephen Robbins said they had an off night. But probably having Stuart Kettlewell, is it Kettlewell or Kettlewell? Kettlewell. Sorry, Stuart, if you're watching, which you probably won't be. It's probably been quite good having him having that experience of managing in the Premiership, to coming in to at least steady the ship, and it certainly had an impact. But I think Hearts, are easily the third best team in Scotland this season, and I think they'll be too strong for Motherwell. So I'm going to go for 3-2 actually. Hearts.
That's what I meant to, but I'll change it. And
no. Well, I'll change it then, because you always change it, and you end up.
Yeah. Then you get it right, and
so I'll go for 4-2 Hearts.
4-2. Okay. Yeah. I went for 3-2 because I don't know, Sky have taken quite a few kind of Motherwell games on a Sunday, usually kind of against Hibs, and they always end up dead high scoring games. So I think it's going to be another one. But it was interesting starting the Motherwell game against St Mirren on Wednesday night, where supposedly St Mirren players had played more games for Motherwell than the Motherwell team had in start 11. So maybe St Mirren lost that game because they still thought they're playing for Motherwell, and we'll see on Saturday. But no, I'm with you in everything you say there in that game, and Liam's went for 1-0 Hearts. We've done Celtic v Gretna, so 3 games in the English Premier League, and the first game on the weekend is Aston Villa against Arsenal. Tasty.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Arsenal lost against Manchester City. I mean, obviously the narrative they want to create is if Arsenal have bottled it. They lost the game against Everton. I think most teams would have lost that first game. Sean Dyche comes in for Everton. They drew against Brentford in a scandalous VAR decision. You can always criticise VAR decisions where referees make interpretations of challenges for penalties. The fact the guy forgot to draw the lines for the offside is inexcusable, and it's cost Arsenal 2 points that may prove. I mean, if they were to lose that league by 2 points, I think it's a scandal. I think it certainly, to me, it kind of devalues the title then, because they were through sheer incompetence or whatever. But I thought the other night against Manchester City, I mean, they're a really good team, Arsenal, but Manchester City, you need to, when you get chances, you need to take them against Manchester City, because they've got players like De Bruyne and Haaland and Gundogan are just top quality players, and you give them half a chance and they score. But I think Arsenal will be there or thereabouts, and I feel that they will bounce back at the weekend, so I think they'll beat Aston Villa 2-1.
Yeah, so I'm actually going for an Aston Villa win. As much as I don't think, I think you're right, that the fact they've not won in 3 games makes it seem like, oh, they're bottling it, and I don't think that is the case at all. It will be interesting to see in this game if they can bounce back and get a victory in it, because anyone can lose to Manchester City. I mean, they're so good, and Arsenal shot themselves in the foot a couple of times with errors at the back, and at that level you just get pounced upon. But in saying that, I've just got a feeling that Villa, less so that Arsenal will lose that game, more that Aston Villa will win it. And Unai Emery's going up against Arsenal again. I think the last time he went up against Arsenal as a manager was with Villarreal in the Europa League, and he was like, I really will have a point to prove, and he beat them. So I think Aston Villa win that game more through themselves other than Arsenal. I'm going for 2-1 for that. And Liam's went for 1-0 to Arsenal. What did you go for?
2-1
to Arsenal. Okay. 2 more games. One of them is Everton against Leeds, which is a real basement battle.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Everton, first game for Sean Dyche, they beat Arsenal 1-0, and I like Sean Dyche. I like the way he conducts himself. And I was surprised it took him so long to get back into football. But then I watched the Merseyside derby, and there was a wee part of me that could see why, because obviously teams are looking for managers that can develop their team and play a certain way. And from the kick-off, it was obvious that Everton were just going to play the ball back and just lump it long. And if Dominic Calvert-Lewis had been playing, maybe that would have worked. But Ellis Sims is just a young guy. We've seen him before at Hearts. And he wasn't able to hold the ball up. And he kind of just played into Liverpool's hands. And it was a good game for Liverpool in the end, that they could play their football, they won the game. So I'm not quite sure. I think that game, I'm not sure if it's going to be a great advert for football. I think it's going to be, because there's so much at stake. Leeds, they've got a real high intensity about them, but they keep losing goals. So yeah. I have a funny feeling, because there'll not be a lot of football there. I think Everton are going to win that one 2-1. 2-1.
I'm going for a 2-0 win. Everton. Agree with everything you've said in that as well. I think for Everton, for Sean Dyche, they're going to just stick to that style. They're not going to change from it. He's obviously done it before and it's worked. But I think the home games are the ones that are going to be so crucial for them. The fact that if they can get Goodison Park rocking for those final however many games they've got left at home, 8 or 9, whatever, and just keep scraping victories, 1-0s, 2-0s, then I think that will probably see them through. And so I'm going to go for 2-0 with that one. I think that Everton quite strong kind of in set pieces and might be the avenue. And Liam has went for 1 each. And then the final game of the weekend is Newcastle against Liverpool. So that's a Newcastle in those top 4 positions, hoping to stay there. Liverpool, after winning Monday, probably thinking, can we get there? But to get there, they'll probably need to win.
Yeah, I don't think they will. I think it's got a draw written all over it. I mean, I think Newcastle have become sort of the draw specialists. They're very hard to beat. They've got really strong defence, and you can see what he's trying to do. What's impressed me actually is the fact that obviously they suddenly have this, lot of money behind them, but they haven't just done a Chelsea and just get out and bought anybody. They're actually trying to build a team and build specific players. I always watch Newcastle and think Kieran Tierney would be perfect in that team. He's not getting a game for Arsenal just now, and the left back at Newcastle is okay, but the way they make Newcastle play, every time I watch them, I think I can just visualise Tierney causing absolute havoc down that left flank. But I think Liverpool, as I say, it was a good game for them in the Merseyside derby. They scored the goal in the back of Everton almost scoring, hit the post, they went up the park, and obviously Jordan Pickford, I think, had popped off for a cup of coffee. Still don't understand why he's England's number one.
No.
Joe Hart's a better goalkeeper than him, never mind the other guys that are in the squad. But I think it was a good game for them for a bit of confidence. But I still think they're a team that needs to rebuild longer term. So it'll be a tough game. Newcastle have got a lot of good players. But as I say, it's got I think I'm going to go for 2 each.
2 each. Yeah, I'm going to go for 1 each, and I think it's the same. It's got a draw written all over it because Newcastle don't concede goals. They don't score tons of goals either. They either keep winning games 1-0 or it's a 0-0, and then they might score in the last minute. But he's building such good foundations there, and when they can add that kind of sprinkling of extra quality, maybe in the summer if they spend a little bit more money. They've not spent massive amounts. I still think 40 million on a player like Anthony Gordon is just bizarre because I've not watched him once and thought he's a really, really good player.
But he's going to end up scoring at the weekend now.
Yeah, against Liverpool, yeah. I know 100%. So I actually might stick a bet on that 1 each. Anthony Gordon first goal scorer, and then Liam's went for 2-0 in that game as well. But second set of fixtures with that. But yeah, that rounds up the podcast, Paul. Hopefully for Celtic we get a victory ourselves over the weekend, and then we can come back in next week and look ahead to a cup final with plenty to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, we were talking in the office the other day, and it's been quite low key in terms of the build up. But you know, once the weekend's fixtures are out the way, it's just going to be, certainly that's all we're going to be talking about. I know the players will just want to keep it low key and level throughout the whole week. But obviously the first bit of silverware of the season, and and it's ours, and we don't want to let it go.
No, 100%. The fact we are still talking about it now, though, means that it's in the back of our heads, even though we just focus one game at a time.
Exactly.
If the manager was sitting here right now, he'd be telling us off probably. So yeah, hopefully we've got a lot to talk about next week, and a good win to talk about for the first team and for the B team as well. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. Again, you can listen to that Glenn Loovens podcast interview on the YouTube channel and Spotify, Apple, Google, anywhere you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Celtic View podcast on all of your streaming platforms, and do join us again next week. But for now, thanks very much for listening. Cheers.